Bismillah, assalamu alaikum. First question says, when can a sister change her wali? Correct? And what else? That's it? If the father says no. With the short period of time that we have, and obviously we have a panel of more than qualified and capable speakers, so I feel a little shy speaking in front of you. Perhaps they'll participate, inshallah. They asked me and they requested me to answer the questions. So with that being said, in brief, not detail, because we learn and we study things in the proper way, like we said in the lecture. But in brief, if the father or any other wali of the girl, the young woman, the young lady, because it doesn't have to be the father, that's the issue in itself. The father could be, or the wali could be her son, if she has a son, or her brother, or her uncle, or her grandfather. What's important is the wali. And right now, let's just say father, to keep it simple. If the father doesn't have a legitimate reason, an authoritative reason from book and from the sunnah to say no, and the young man is compatible with his daughter, he is compatible Islamically and compatible in the worldly issues as well, what is considered to be compatibility, and the sister wants to marry him, he wants to marry her, and there is no legitimate concrete reason to say no, then this wali is called adil. And adil, in the Quran, he doesn't have the right of saying yes and saying no. He loses his waliship with those conditions. Who is next to be the wali depends on what type of men she has in her family. If she doesn't come from a Muslim background, the imam from the masjid, etc. The Prophet ﷺ, he tells us, فَإِنِ اشْتَجَرُوا فَالسُّلْطَانُ وَلِيُّ مَنْ لَا وَلِيَ لَهُ. He says when people fight and they differ, then the sultan, the leader, is the wali of those who have no walis. The last thing I want to say is, brothers and sisters, in brief, is do not rush in replacing your father. Do not rush in getting the brother from the masjid to marry you off instead of your father. Oftentimes, the wali at the masjid, he has limited time. He has limited resources. He wants to help you out, but he has 50 other sisters and other people that he has to tend to. He doesn't have the love, the tender love and care, the jealousy, the good intention for you like your father may have. Even if your father is a little ignorant, or if he's racist or prejudiced, or whatever the case may be. So don't rush. And perhaps it's not necessarily that the father says no, but maybe you asked him the wrong way. Maybe you hear bad things about the brother. Take your time. Try to do it the proper way. Get someone to speak, someone to intercede. Take your time. Explain to him how much you want to be with the brother. He's a good brother, inshallah. Take your time. At the end of the day, if he says no because of his race, his age, this and that, which is not legitimate reason, then the ruling is what we've previously mentioned, and Allah knows best. Once more, as a disclaimer, this is in brief. Allah knows best. What if the guy, a woman is married to domestically abused or crazy? How can she get a divorce from him if he doesn't consent? If there's a man who's abusing his wife, physically, verbally, spiritually, whatever the case may be, and the sister does not wish to remain patient, and she says, I want to be away from this man who's harming me and abusing me, and he refuses to marry her, then the local imam or the resident scholar, with the necessary witnesses, the necessary proof and evidence, the necessary communication, will break the marriage, which is called al-fasakh. They will annul and abate the marriage, but with the necessary proofs, with the necessary witnesses, with the necessary communication. A sister runs to the masjid, my husband, he beat me up, astaghfirullah. And her brother says, you're no longer married to your husband. That's wrong. And we've seen this happen before. A sister, she comes to the masjid and she only mentions half of the story, or she twists the story. He hit her, he punched her, but she threw something at him and cut him with the car keys. And an imam who's naive, who's gullible, who's inexperienced, he gives a ruling without knowing what's going on. So you have to know with the proper evidence. Sister, can you have a screenshot of these text messages? Do you have a voice recording? Do you have witnesses who've seen this and heard this? Police reports, whatever the case may be, and the necessary communication. Assalamu alaikum, this is Imam such and such. I'm calling you on behalf of the masjid. Your wife is in the masjid with a broken jaw and a black eye. I'm communicating with you. Please come to the masjid, so on and so forth. We really need to talk. No, get out of my face. Who the heck are you? Call again, a third time. You record it. He refuses, then the marriage is to be broken up. And Allah knows best. Next question says,
do it because we have 10 minutes for all the questions.
Okay,
Yes,
sorry.
we can.
Bismillah. Go faster, you're saying.
Yeah.
Tayyib. That's all you gotta say. Question says, can you list some things that constitute as free mixing? How to take advice from someone who's doing the same things they are advising you against? What's important is free mixing is crystal clear. Mixing. There's a man, there's a woman, there's a boy, there's a girl. Or if they're sitting with each other, sitting in the same room, there's mixing. Obviously, there are levels of mixing, and there are reasons behind mixing. Some mixing is necessary and mandatory, such as medical issues, necessity. Certain mixing is totally unnecessary. The sisters could have been separated from the brothers. Some mixing is a means of difficulty. We don't have enough space to have another room. This college or this institute, it depends on the situation. And even if you are mixed or you are mixed, lower your gaze. Don't be lustful. Ask Allah to protect you and try to get married. And keep in mind that that's someone's daughter that you're staring at. That's someone's sister that you're lusting over. Be mindful of this. Obviously, this is in brief. We don't have a lot of time. And Allah knows best. With regards to someone who's giving you advice and they themselves are being hypocritical, take the advice. The truth is not determined by a person's actions. A drunkard on the street could give you good advice. A drug addict could give you good advice. Don't do drugs. Don't waste your life like I wasted my life. I could have been this. I used to be this. I used to be that. Stay away from it. You take advice wherever you find it, and Allah knows best.
What if you're in high school? What if you're in high school and you don't think your family will take you seriously on getting married?
If you don't think your family will take you seriously, you get married in high school, ask yourself, are you ready to get married? Just because, and I want to be blunt, just because you want to have sex, you have sexual desires, it doesn't mean that you're ready for marriage. And this is a reality. We don't believe in sugarcoating the truth. And this is most young people when they think about marriage, because I can't have a girlfriend, I can't have a boyfriend, so I got to get married. Are you responsible? Do you take care of your hygiene? You have to be a perfect person. But you have to look at the level of your maturity, because marriage is a serious step. This is not a joke, it's not a game. And this goes back to the hadith that we quoted, how you live as a Muslim. What is your deen like as a whole? So, if you're serious and responsible and mature, and you fear falling to zina, that's one thing. If you're still laughing and joking, that's a different story. And Allah knows best.
It is prohibited for a woman to go visit her husband without a mahram because of him not having papers to travel. And is it also prohibited to be married and not being with your husband for more than a year because of living in two different countries?
The Prophet ﷺ told us and informed us that a woman should not travel without a mahram. A woman should not travel without a mahram unless there is a necessity, unless it's a necessity. There are details with regards to modern means of traveling in 2017. Without a mahram on the plane, etc. 3 days, 1 day. We don't have the time to discuss those details. What's important is don't travel unless you have a mahram. That's the best thing to do. If it's a necessity, if you have to go see your husband or your family, then that's a different issue. What's important is if you're waiting on your papers, if husband is working, if you can't travel, your mother is sick, and you're pleased with that agreement, there's nothing wrong with it. But the husband should try his best, or the wife should try her best to see each other every 3 to 4 months. Try your best to see your husband or your wife in a different country at least every 4 months. Try your best. Every 6 months, try your best, whatever you can. What's important is if the woman says, I want out of this marriage. I don't want you living in America, I'm living here. Come see me. No. Then that's a whole different story. But if they're both okay with it, then those are the details. And Allah knows best.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. Could you give me the evidence of where the practice of asking the man, that means future zawj, to sign a contract that he will never take another wife while he's married to her come from?
Well, for this issue, the scholars of Islam have two views. Some of the scholars of Islam, they say that it is unlawful and invalid for a woman to make this type of stipulation. Haram and batil. And other scholars, they say it's permissible for a woman to make this type of stipulation. The evidence that's been requested in the question is based off of 2 hadiths. The first hadith that states, Al-Muslimuna ala shurutihim, that the Muslims are restricted and they must abide by their conditions. We agreed on this, we got to stick to it. Marriage, buying, selling, whatever the case may be. And then there's another hadith that says, Inna ahaqqa shuruti, the conditions that deserve to be fulfilled and upheld the most, mastahlaltum bihil furuj, are the conditions that pertain to marital relations. So a woman says, don't take me out of this city. Don't take me out of this house. Don't prevent me from seeing my family. Don't make me wear a niqab. And the husband agrees, then these ulama, they say that the husband has to abide by them. What's important is, I would advise against this stipulation 101% for a woman to ask and for a man to agree that he's only going to remain in a monogamous relationship. I feel that is extremely unwise, and Allah knows best.
If a woman doesn't want to oppose the sunnah, however, she emotionally cannot accept her husband marrying a second wife, what should the wife do?
The wife should make jihad against her nafs. You want something, you know something's right, but you have your own personal shortcomings. Tayyib, that's fine. Cry, do what you have to do, ask Allah to make your heart strong. Ask Allah to allow you to accept it, just like any other problem that a person has. I have a drinking problem. I know drinking's haram. I know it's bad for my body, but it's hard to stop drinking. I've been drinking my whole life. You fall, you make a mistake, you keep fighting. Ask Allah to remove it from you and try your best to stifle your own personal desires. Bi'idhnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَمَنْ يَتَصَبَّرْ يُصَبِّرْهُ اللَّهُ. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, anyone who wishes and tries to practice patience, Allah will make him patient.
Okay, the last one. How can you advise someone who is prideful and gets offended easily?
How can you advise someone who's prideful and gets offended easily? First piece of advice is to avoid people who say things about you. Avoid people who say negative things about you. Always making jokes or taking stabs at you. Avoid those people if you're very sensitive. Secondly is the Muslim, every Muslim should have some type of pride. And what I mean by pride is not kibr, which is haram, and it means of not entering paradise. We mean self-respect. Self-respect. If someone's naturally touchy, very sensitive, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. What's important is that you should be around people that say good things about you. You should be around people that make you feel good. And don't ever forget, brothers and sisters, strong people don't put people down, but they do what? They lift people up. Inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.